Cheers, y'all. It's no drinking in the library. Darth Crow, Whitney, whatever y'all want to say. This is like my fourth take. I'm like halfway through my drink. That's okay. It's an adult chocolate milk. A little scotch of vodka and some chocolate syrup, not chocolate syrup, Kahlua, strawberry syrup, and milk. We are reading a delightful story from the children's bedtime book. It's been a really rough 2020 for a lot of people. At the end of the year, we lost somebody really close to us, and a great bookworm, a great warrior woman, unexpected, and we were not ready. And you know, it just has been a really sucky year, mentally, physically, financially, for a lot of people. And I just thought it would be kind of nice to get back to the basics, coach, and just read a story, because it makes you feel good or makes you like the art or whatever. And I'm gonna just read it, give a little bit of flashes of commentary every now and again. But I thought that, I don't know, it'd be a nice little thing. So, the children's bedtime book, printed in Czechoslovakia, 1984. It is written by, or the stories are retold by Mae Bradley. Illustrations are by Mary Smith, Joe Eaves, and Anna Dzierżek. I think that's pretty close. I don't know, did anybody else have this book growing up? My partner just told me he did. I mean, look. I mean, I'm an art kid. I mean, look at all that. This is a kid's first painting. This is one of my very best friends in the whole world. This is one of mine that I read it a lot, but it's like emotionally, there's a lot of layers of paint in that painting, because that's kind of how I cope with death and loss, is color and stories. And this book was such an influential part of my life growing up, and the colors are so vivid. And it's not Disney. It's not dark necessarily, but they're just different. This is an English kids storybook, and it kind of reads like it. I puzzled over what should I read to you, because we've got art like this. We've got art like this. Look how pretty she is. We've got art like this. Spoilers, y'all. What the heck? What the heck? My goal is to make this to where a kid could watch it, if you all are desperate for story time. Look at her. How amazing is that? Anyway, all right. So I thought that, you know, as an adult, sometimes I just need a nice warm hug. I just want to. That's why it's out. This is my book from when I was little. Look at my mama's handwriting in it. Such a mama's girl. Anyway, without further ado, I have a little stuffed animal audience, and Pup is snoring in the background. I'm going to read you the first story out of the children's bedtime book, Sleeping Beauty. This is the story of a far-off kingdom and the people who lived and things that happened long, long ago. Among the green valleys of Germany, nestling aside the side of a steep hill, there's going to be some, like, stutters. There was once a fairy tale castle, with flags flying from its turrets and its many windows twinkling in the sun. The castle presented a smiling face to the world. Inside, too, there was music and laughter, for this was the home of a king and his wife, kind and just rulers who were well loved by all the people of that kingdom. Yet, in the midst of all that happiness, the queen would sometimes become quiet. Her lovely face would grow sad. You little cow. For the joy of having a child, I would change places with the poorest in the land, she confided one day to her lady-in-waiting, as though through her window. She watched the peasant children outside at their carefree play. The queen's longing was shared by the king, but the years passed, and still no heir was born to that kingdom. Now among the king's subjects were 12 wise women. Nobody knew from whence these women came, but many believed that they were as old as time itself, and everyone knew that they possessed the powers of magic. They're haunted. There's some old southern ladies in the background. I know this is an English book, but one of these women saw with pity the queen's growing sadness, and being a kindly little soul, she decided to grant the queen's wish. Look at that castle. Did you see that creeper lady? That's the queen. Oh, look at her staring at all these little kids down the road. Let me adjust my dragon. I'll show you the setup at the end. So it came about that one summer's day, a princess was born. Such was the joy of the proud parents that they wanted to share their happiness with all their friends and subjects. The king ordered that a great feast should be prepared. Invitations were sent out, and the cooks and the housemaids and the courtiers raced up and down the castle stairs and corridors in a frenzy of preparation. It was a splendid occasion. All the richest and noblest families in the land attended, filling the great hall with color and laughter. Ha ha ha. Present too were poor peasants, dressed in their Sunday best clothing. Wait, their best Sunday clothing, but Sunday best, you know. Their well-scrubbed faces shining and red, all sat down at the same table and were served with the same food on the king's best gold plates. From the head of the top table, the king looked round with pleased affection at those who joined with him in celebrating his daughter's birth. His gaze rested with special gratitude on the wise women, the 12 wise women, seated near him, who would shortly use their wonderful powers to ensure that the life of the young princess was blessed with every grace and good fortune. 1, 2, 3. Without knowing it, he did it. He counted them, and then an awful realization came to him. There were only 11 wise women present. Somehow, in the issuing of the invitations, he had omitted one of the 12. All right, so like ancient time witchcraft and magicry, you couldn't invite 13 people. So this book intentionally took that 13th out, which is one of the many variations of Sleeping Beauty. Is there were 12, and then 12 invited to the dinner party, and one wasn't invited, and that's who showed up, and she was number 13. But in this variation, they do show us the 11. So I want to show you the art. So look at the queen. Like 70s glamour, right? Look at the king. He's cheesing over his babe, and the two different art styles. Children are different than the adults. Look at them rushing around, helping the masters. They look kind of like Hogwarts letters. Maybe that's where JK got this from. His face paled and his hand holding a wine glass trembled. Then, seeing his dear wife looking at him in concern, he tried to dispel the cold fear that had suddenly gripped his heart. He would apologize personally to the fairy woman, he told himself. And yes, that was it. He would invite her to another celebration, which would be attended only by his most intimate friends. She would be flattered by this special treatment and would readily forgive the unintentional insult that had occasioned it. Even as he made these plans, the wise women rose from the banquet table. They walked in single file to the raised dais on which stood the cradle where the baby princess lay. Up the 3 steps went the smallest of the women, more like a farmer's wife than a dainty fairy. She was round and rosy. Her voice, when she spoke, was high and nervous. "My sister fairies, I wish to bless the baby princess, at whose birth we shall all rejoice." She pulled a tiny wand from the folds of her gown, and from the wand came great flashes of silver as she waved it over the sleeping child. And my words get really messed up because I've had this book since I was a kid and I'm not 100% sure. A second fairy stepped forward. "Beauty of face and form are the gifts I bring. With every year that passes, her loveliness with increase." Oh, I didn't do the first one. Let me start over. She pulled a tiny wand from the fold of her gown, and from the wand came great flashes of silver as she waved it over the sleeping child. "I bear the gift of love, which she will something and receive generously." A second fairy stepped forward. "Beauty of face and form are the gifts I bring. With every year that passes, her loveliness will increase." The third fairy came up. "Beauty better than beauty or grace. She will have a heart easily stirred to pity for things weak and suffering, and the desire to improve by her every deed the world around her," was the promise of the fourth. Oh, the third was, "She will be graceful as a gazelle, dancing through life on fairy feet," said the third. Then the fifth, "The gift of true sight and hearing shall be hers, so that she may see beauty in all things and enjoy the eternal music of the wind and the waves." I think she might be a mermaid. "I bring her the gift of laughter, ho ho ho, which, like the sun's rays, lightens the darkest day." The bearer of this gift smiled down upon the sleeping princess. "Mine is the gift of wisdom, so that she may know the true value of the people and the things around her," said a little woman, bent and aged. The next fairy had a voice that was strong and sweet. Let's see if I can do strong and sweet. "From water, sea, and air, I give her protection. Neither the fury of the storm nor the consuming heat of the sun will overcome her. Riches and wealth she will have, but she will use them wisely for her own happiness and for the good of others," said the ninth woman. "Joy will be her companion every day that she lives," promised the next fairy. I feel like so annoying of these. The 11th wise woman, the tallest and oldest of them all, began to walk up towards the silk-draped cradle, but before she could declare her gift, a great flash of lightning, there should be a comma, lit up the windows of the hall, and a storm more violent than any she could remember raged outside. As though they were indeed expecting another guest, the eyes of everyone present turned towards the heavy oak door. They saw that it had been blown open by a mighty gust of wind, and in the door stood the fairy whom no one remembered to invite. Look at how beautiful she is. I just remember being mesmerized by her. She was a tall and stately figure, but her face was distorted and ugly with jealousy and hate. I don't think that's ugly. I think she's beautiful. Those cheeks, nose. So this child is to be blessed above all others, to have beauty and wisdom, wealth and kindness, and joy too, every day that she lives. The wise woman laughed loudly, and the faces of everyone present grew pale at the sound of that laughter. Yet joy she will have, continued the woman, but her days will be few. This is my gift to this precious child. In her 15th year, the king's daughter shall wound herself on a spindle and fall down dead. In that dreadful silence that followed, the 12th fairy, who had her gift still to give, bent over the baby's cradle. Look at that bend. No words of mine can remove this terrible curse, she said sadly. But with my power of magic, I decree that this death overcomes the king's daughter. It shall not be a real death, but only 100 years deep sleep. This is my gift. Now, in my opinion, that's kind of a silky gift because, like, 100 years of deep sleep is, like, a really long time. I guess it's not death, but it's kind of a death because you don't have anybody that you grew up with anymore. Like those kids in the street kicking it. They don't have their friends anymore after 100 years. So, like, it's like a vampire death, kind of. Anyway. I do want to show you this baby again. Because look at that. Like, I was obsessed with this art. Look at her. She looks badass. No wonder I turned out a witch. I mean, like, that was my role. Like, look, it's okay. It's like 1,000,000 years old. And I've read it a lot. The parents of the princess were overcome by dread and sorrow. Thinking to save his dear child from harm, the king sent out an order that every spindle in the kingdom should be burned. That very same evening, a mighty holocaust rose up to the heavens as the people gladly complied with the wishes of their king. But the wicked fairy woman only laughed at the sight. Ha ha ha. In the years that followed, the gifts of the wise woman were all fulfilled, for the girl was so beautiful, good, kind, and sensible that nobody who knew her could help but loving her. Soon, even her parents began to disbelieve that evil could ever befall so favored a girl. Only her name reminded them of the fairy woman's curse, for she had been called Briar Rose, and everyone knows that even the most beautiful rose bears a thorn. That's a cool quote. No wonder I turned out the way I did. Look at what I was reading. The 15th birthday of the princess came and went without mishap. Now everyone was convinced that the woman's evil power had been thwarted. So it was that a few weeks after her birthday, the princess was left quite alone in the castle, while her parents and their servants attended a great function in a nearby kingdom. The girl was not lonely. She wandered happily through the rooms and chambers, many of which she had never before seen. At last she came to some narrow, winding stairs that led up to an old tower. At the top of the steps was a little door with a rusty key in the lock. When the princess turned the key, the door sprang open, and there in the little dusty room sat an old woman, busily spinning her flax on a spindle. Alright, so this is when the king told them to burn all the spindles. Look at the flames. They rise high to the top of the book. And then we have Briar Rose coming up into the tower. And there's that cute little old lady. She kind of looks like a Soko old lady with that little headpiece. Nerd alert. Briar Rose had never seen a spindle before, and being a clever girl, she was fascinated by anything new. I mean, so, like, the king kind of created the reason that allowed her to be cursed in the first place. If he had not, like, completely abstained her from even knowing what a spindle was, she wouldn't have tried it. I'm just throwing some commentary. Reader's commentary. What sort of a thing is it that jumps about so gaily? She asked the woman. Try for yourself, my dear. The princess sat down on the little stool, but she had hardly touched the spindle before the spell was fulfilled, and she pricked her finger on it. At that instant, she felt the prick. She fell down. At the instant she felt the prick, she fell down on the floor and lay in a deep sleep. But the fairy... Let's just go ahead and show you that one, because look at that prick on her finger. Look how I just love it. I mean, like, perfect Ren Fair pattern. But the fairy who changed the spell of death into one of sleep, and who knew that this accident must happen to the girl, came now with her friends to that little room in the tower. They carried Briar Rose back to her own bedroom in the castle and lay gently on the bed. "Sleep softly, sweet princess, and dream sweet dreams," said the good and wise woman. "And so that you may not wake to mourn your parents and friends in a strange world," I guess I was a little preemptive, "I will give you company in your long sleep." Even as she spoke, sleep spread over the whole castle. I love their fucking robes. I love their robes. The king and queen, who had just come home and entered the hall, began to sleep, and all the courtiers with them. The horses went to sleep in the stables, the dogs in the yard, the doves on the roof, the flies on the wall. Yes, even the fire that was flickering in the hearth grew still and went to sleep. The roast meat stopped spluttering, the maid stopped stirring the soup, sleeping as she stood, and the cook, who was going to give the boy a smart slap because he had forgotten to watch the sauce, let him go and slept. In the castle courtyard, the wind was still, and the no leaf stirred in the trees that grew there. Then all around the castle rose a thick hedge of briars. It got higher every year until it surrounded the whole castle and grew up over it, so that nothing could be more seen of the castle. So that nothing more could be seen of the castle on the hill, not even the flag on its roof. In the farms and villages of the kingdom, of those who had known and loved the princess grew old and died. Others were born then, and they too died, until at last there was nobody alive who could really prove that the castle had ever existed. Because if you remember, like, only, like, the internals of the castle was still there. It was, like, frozen, locked all up, and nobody knew it was inside the castle. But the story was still told of the beautiful sleeping Briar Rose, and from time to time, king's sons came and tried to get through the hedge and into the castle. But the briars, as though they had hands, clung fast together. The young men were imprisoned in the cruel tangles, and sometimes they could not get out again, and they died a wretched death. And his pantaloons. Nobody asked you. I'm just joking. We're trying to rescue. At last, after long, long years, a king's son, handsome and brave, came into that country. He listened to the story of the lovely Briar Rose, who lay sleeping in the hidden castle, surrounded by her parents and courtiers, who slept too. "I will go and see the beautiful prince." "I will go and see the beautiful princess," declared the prince. Did that come a little bit like Inigo Montoya? "Hello, I will go, and I will see the beautiful princess," declared the prince. The old man warned him of the peril of the briar hedge, and of the many who, in attempting to conquer it, had died sad deaths. "I am not afraid," said the prince. "No hedge or barrier will keep me from Briar Rose." By now the 100 years were over, and the day had come when Briar Rose was to wake again. So when the king's son went to the briars, they became suddenly just great, beautiful flowers that parted of their own accord before him and allowed him to pass through unhurt. Convenient. Behind him they closed together in a green hedge again, neat and low. In the castle courtyard, the prince saw the horses and the mottled hounds as they sprawled, fast asleep on the roof, perched to the doves, their heads stuck under the wings. When he entered the castle, the flies were sleeping on the wall, and the cat in the kitchen. The cook still held up his hand as though to hit the boy, and the maid stood sleeping, her hand still poised to stir the big cauldron of soup. He walked amazed through the rooms. That soup's gotta be cold and gross. He walked amazed through the rooms of sleeping people. In the great hall, he found all the courtiers lying at the tables and on the floor. Asleep and on their thrones slept the king and the queen. So this is the king's son talking to the villagers. "Where's this castle? I can't find it." And here's all the courtiers and the chefs and everyone waking up from their deep sleep. His footsteps echoed through the silent castle as he climbed the stairs. The bedrooms were all empty until he came to the one where Briar Rose lay. The prince held his breath in wonder at her beauty. He could not take his eyes off the girl who smiled so gently in her sleep. He bent down to kiss her, and just as he touched her with his lips, Briar Rose awoke. As Briar Rose and the prince went downstairs together, the king awoke, and the queen and all the courtiers woke up too, rubbing their eyes. The horses in the courtyard got up and shook themselves. The hounds sprang up and wagged their tails. The doves on the roof pulled out their heads from under their wings and flew away. The flies on the wall began to crawl again, and the fire in the kitchen started up with a great blaze to cook the dinner. And the maid resumed her stirring of the soup, and the cook gave the boy a great box on the ear, a punishment that he had earned 100 years before. Amid scenes of great happiness and splendor, Briar Rose married the king's son, and they lived happily till their life's end. Oh, there they are. Aren't they so pretty? So there's some little nursery rhymes, and I'm going to cherry pick the nursery rhymes because I can, and one of them is going to make me giggle. I'm going to make you giggle. I don't know. You might not have a sophomoric sense of humor as I do. I love little Pussy. I love little Pussy. Her coat is so warm. And if I don't hurt her, she'll do me no harm. I'll not pull her tail, nor drive her away. But Pussy and I very gently will play. Curly locks, wilt thou be mine? Thou shalt not wash dishes, nor yet feed swine, but sit on a cushion and sew a fine seam, and feed upon strawberries, sugar, and cream. Simple Simon met to Pieman going to the fair. Said Simple Simon to the Pieman, let me taste your ware. Said the Pieman to Simple Simon, show me first your penny. Said Simple Simon to the Pieman, indeed, I haven't any. So, did you like hearing me read some crap? So yeah, I enjoyed it. Here was a weird rendition of No Drinking in the Library. That's why we drink at home. Here are my friends. First of all, thank you to my buddy Blue helping me record. To all my friends who were here and helped support me. And Dingo, who gave you some commentary and fell asleep at the end. So thanks for hanging out with me. It's Whitney, aka Darth Crow. No drinking in the library. That's why we drink at home. I hope you have some light. And I hope this wasn't too silly. Bye, y'all.